So now moving down to the next layer. There is, in this model, notice I've only got one HVAC system. If you had two, you could add a second one below this one. You actually have to go up one level above and you right click, and that's when you can see you can add a system. And if you added a system, it would put it down below, and you'd have a second system, and you could add the zones of the house that are served by that system under it. If you did that by accident, let's say you really didn't want that there, you can cut it back out or delete it. Delete will get rid of it completely. So here's our HVAC system. We actually use several of these tabs on this section, so we'll go through it one by one. First of all, make sure it's existing, so it'll be that's important. The rule of thumb, just to make it hopefully more clear, is that if you want something to be affected by any improvements, it needs to be listed as existing. Anything that's listed as new won't be changed even if you indicate an improvement in the Alternatives tab. I'll come back to that when we get to the part of doing the simulations. So I just clicked on the library for the HVAC system, and we've got this screen. I'm going to try and scrunch it up a little bit so it's not so small. Let's see if that'll help. Okay. Maybe not. Okay. There we go. Again, like we saw with the water heater, there's all these brand name model numbers on there, and no, you are not expected to find your precise model of HVAC system on this list. Good chance it might not be there, in fact. What we do want you to do, though, is make sure that what you pick, and when we say pick, we mean find something that's similar, and use that to base your model on. So notice I've got down here at the bottom, I've got a couple different copies, things that I've made a copy of by using the little plus sign, and then I've modified it to match what it is I want. Notice you can also create a system where if you don't watch out, you could do it where you have a system where it's actually got no heating and no cooling, even though you may have dutifully copied it over and filled in the efficiencies and so forth. So when you copy something over, try to find something that's close to what you want, keeping in mind a package system is one where the units are in one box. Typically these are industrial systems, although it is conceivable you could have one that's, say, on the roof that does everything in one. But if we're talking about a typical split system where the cooling fan for the AC unit's outside and the furnace is inside, you would pick one of these split systems. Let's say that I liked the this one right here, but I felt, well, it's not quite right. Maybe my output's a little different. You can, again, you can make a copy by highlighting it and then pressing the plus at the top, and you'll be brought down to the bottom. On the heating tab, you can actually change the name. You can make it My System. But notice what happened. I made a copy, but this is a copy that doesn't have a heating, so I'll have to change that. This is My System. So I can go in, I change the heating type. It's a gas furnace. It's central. The output, maybe it is 74,000 BTUs. Maybe it's 80. If it's 80, you change it here. The efficiency. This is a high efficiency unit, but we're talking about my existing buildings, so maybe that's not quite right. What do I really have? Let's take a look. We're going to go over to my jobs reporting template and see what I've actually got in my model. So HVAC systems down here. I really have a 78% efficient unit with 50,000 BTUs. So I go back to my EnergyPro. It's got 50,000 BTUs here. And notice the efficiency is a decimal, so 78% looks like that. Now I've got my central gas furnace, 50,000 BTUs, 78% efficiency. And that's set up. You may want to know, well, what if I've got some of these other features over here? These typically, my understanding is that the EnergyPro isn't sensitive to these other settings over here for a residential system, although baseboard heat may come into play. I know that there have been some jobs that have come through where the question was, what if I have an unusual system, if maybe it's a wall furnace and I have some baseboard heating that's electric. To be honest, I haven't tried those out yet, so if you're trying to model it, it doesn't look right, let us know. We can look at it more closely. Once you've made sure the heating matches with what your intent is, you go to the cooling section, fill that in. There's an efficiency and SEER rating, and then there's also the EER that we want you to make sure that you're putting in both. The system will be looking at both of those. And then the output value is here. So this is the tonnage. So we're using 12,000 BTUs per hour per ton here. And then for sensible, we have been using a guideline of this number being 78% of this number here. However, if you have it measured, if you know it's something different, you can fill that in. Okay. Whoops. All right. Notice that there are several other tabs here on this library. There's these controls, outdoor air, fans, evaporative cooling. These are not used for the residential module. And unfortunately, this means that fans that are in the system, such as whole house fans or any other kind of fan that you are looking at in the house, EnergyPro doesn't model those separately for the residential simulations. It has an assumption about fans that are built into the HVAC system, but the addition of a whole house fan, for example, is not something that can be modeled in EnergyPro. Okay. So if all the numbers are okay, we can hit OK. That brings us back to the main screen. Let's come over here to the rest of the tabs here. Once we've done the HVAC system, then we can go over to the distribution system. This is the ductwork. You can pick whether it's ducted, ductless, radiant, baseboard for the heating and cooling, and then the location. Is it in the attic? Is it in the garage? Is it covered, deep covered? Is it in the basement? You pick the one that's applicable. And then we ask that you click this button here, low leakage AHU, HERS2 leakage verified. Hold on for a moment, please. Okay. So under this one, this is where you enter in the % duct leakage. This terminology is a holdover from the other modules, so it is not necessarily that you're saying that you have somehow run a HERS2 rating on this or that you've got a low leakage air handling unit. This is just the way that the model is able to accommodate typing in duct leakage percentage number. So you go ahead, you check there, you type this in, and you also can type in the leakage flow rate here. Again, this is all for the existing house. The duct insulation value, this is meant to be an average, so you just put in the value, the R value for the current duct insulation there. If, however, you have a situation where you have multiple duct runs with differences in terms of insulation, and if you are wanting to make changes to that system, you can check a measured duct surface and then go into this menu right here. This adds some complexity to the modeling because now you are modeling the individual runs, so you have to indicate the diameter, the length, and the insulation value for each of the runs and their location. But what you will notice is that whatever you type in here will be showing up on that main screen. Don't be thrown by that. If you use this measured duct information box, then EnergyPro will only look at this box and won't look at what's showing up on the main distribution screen. This down here, attic insulation covering ducts, this part is just for basically the way this is set up. This box is primarily used if you're modeling a post-retrofit house and doing that separately from modeling the pre-retrofit house. This is an example of, you would probably use this box only if you're creating two models, one for the pre-retrofit condition and one for the post-retrofit condition. And that is where then you would want to get into this if you are, say, redesigning the duct system and you are insulating the duct work especially, and or you are doing some deep buried ducts and you want to be able to get credit for that. You will want to go in here and be able to put in the values for the duct work and for the insulation you're putting on top. Because this is assuming you've got, if you've got covered ducts, that's where this number will be pulled in. If, however, you are not building those two models, if you are just either sealing ducts or you are using, pretty much all the ducts are about the same R value throughout, you can just use this box to put in the duct insulation. So moving on from here, the next tab over, actually I'm going to show you one more thing. Notice there's information down here about residential and ducts, etc. Notice that's non-residential. None of that will be used on the screen, so it's just this area up here. Now let's go to the residential tab. We are just requiring, as a matter of the program policy, we want everybody's model to be set to setback here. Although there are other options, we want to make sure this says setback. The model will be sensitive to other choices, but this is the one that we're using for all the models. On the HERS Credits tab, you'll use this to fill in information about air infiltration. So here at the bottom, there's a building envelope section, and this is where you can enter in the air leakage from your blower door test in terms of CFM 50. So I've entered in 2800 for this one. Notice that there's other choices. You can put in specific leakage area if you happen to have that. It'll open up the other box, but typically if you're doing a blower door test, you come away with a CFM number. So that's what most people end up using. And if you use your scroll, I accidentally scrolled that across. Okay. So make sure when you fill things in, people, we've had comments from users that sometimes you type in a number and you click somewhere else in the model, and when you come back, the number hasn't stuck. If you are having trouble with that, do let us know, or you can let EnergySoft know. We try to push those comments over to them so they can fix those problems. What I typically do, just to make sure that it was recorded, is that when I enter in something, I also click somewhere else on that same screen. So maybe I just click on the pull-down menu to make sure that it's remembered the number I just typed in. You'll see on the screen there are a few other check boxes. This QII box, there's a few other things that are verified items. These are relevant to HERS ratings, Title 24 HERS ratings. If you have had an HVAC system installed and you're in one of the zones that requires there be a HERS rating to check it, which are typically the inland climate zones, it's possible that maybe one of these measures was confirmed. If you have the documentation for that, then you can provide that documentation and may be able to check one or more of these boxes. But we only want to see those checked if we have the copy of the documentation. You can scan it in, send it to us along with the submission of the model. And the same goes for QII. This is not something that you can just declare. You actually will have, if you check any of those, we do need to see some documentation to go along with it. And this is the tab we're not using, so don't. That one will not have an effect on your model, so you don't need to look at that. So it's just these first four that there's something of interest there. So just looking at some of the questions, and I know there's many, many questions coming through, so I'll just take a couple of these and we'll answer the rest if we have time. There's a question about what